you've had a busy morning.
Oh man, not a busy morning. It's a crazy week. I don't know if you follow what's going on here with our lovely Prime Minister and his Russian friends. It's going to be interesting. Tomorrow there are demonstrations expected against Fico government, pro-Russian, pro-Putin, anti-EU stances, his whole foreign policy. So they're expected to be really huge.
It took me a long time until I understood his name is pronounced Fico and not Fico.
Well, there is actually Robert Fico in the Italian parliament. He's far less popular.
Okay, yeah. But I don't know really what angle to start with, because we should definitely talk a little bit about Fico. But I think we can start a little bit broader, just leaning into your expertise, your core expertise. Would you say there is a hybrid war on Europe today?
There is not much of a debate whether that's the case. I have been moving around for the last 7-ish years around or inside of the military and intelligence community of our allied friends, underline and emphasize nowhere else. So I've been part of a couple of NATO educational centers where I took courses and got really well connected with many of the alliance's top thinkers in the field of hybrid threats and gray zone warfare and intelligence and all that sort of things that you need to understand when you want to understand how Russia is moving in Europe and China, of course. So my background really starts a long time ago as a conflict journalist. I was a conflict reporter. I've covered the Arab Spring, then I moved. So I've been to Libya, but mostly in Syria. Basically, my all Syrian or Arab Spring experience happened in and around Aleppo, and I was able to travel also a little bit down to Hama, which was not exactly a sane thing to do in that period of time. I was friends with many journalists who've been executed by the Islamists, so the famous names. I don't want to really much talk about that, but it was a very small community. So I started somewhere there. And then I moved on to Ukraine. I was on Maidan.
You were on the big Maidan Square.
Yeah, okay. 2014, yes. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I was there when Russian snipers basically murdered more than 100 people. I was that day on the square. I heard the bullets. Really, that was, and obviously I attended the funerals afterwards as a photojournalist, as a reporter. And that was a massive experience for me, totally different from the Middle East, because Ukraine is a neighbor. Ukraine looks as, but I'm 10 years ago, right? So Kiev looked the same. I remember Slovakia from my childhood. Now Slovakia is like really westernized when you are in a bigger city. Advertisements everywhere, McDonald's and all that chains and franchises that you are familiar with from any Western city, really.
Ukraine in 2015 was similar.
It was Kiev. Yeah, it was similar to, and I felt like I stepped through a time portal and I was like moved through a wormhole into my childhood. So it felt really very familiar. But the violence, that was the same as in any conflict, as in any war, but it hit me personally much more than anything really before. And I witnessed bad stuff in my previous days as a reporter. So after Maidan, I decided to go to Donetsk. It was about the time when the first farce, so-called referendum for independence took place. So that was roughly the time right after, I think, the battle for Donetsk airport. So I've been there moving with the other side, the rebels. I don't know how to call them, the Russian-sponsored proxy military. And what happened there, I spent 2 weeks with the battalion of, he called himself the Batman, or even like Batman insignia. I don't recall his first name. The second name was Bednov. And a month after I left, he was killed in an ambush, probably by his competitor forces. And then I stopped being a journalist, I decided that is not the path I want to take, and I went back to study to academia, and I studied international security at the University of Leicester in the UK.
What do you think made you decide this? Was it the fear of violence or something else?
That's a good question, because there's a specific answer to that. When I moved from Kiev to the eastern parts, to the Donetsk region, what amazed me, it really hit me in my face, was the striking difference in the narrative, why people are picking up arms. And while in Kiev it was the fight for independence, for European integration, which is the first and main reason why the Maidan actually happened, because Yanukovych refused to join the entry negotiations for Ukraine.
Yeah.
In Donetsk, people with straight faces, and there were civilians, like really civilians, policemen, firemen, and young guys who were physically able and motivated to fight. They have told me that with straight faces, totally convinced that they are absolutely right, that there has been a coup in Kiev, and that the grandchildren, figuratively speaking, of the Nazis who were trying to conquer Russia during the Second World War are coming back to finish the job. And that happened after the Russians have disconnected them from Ukrainian broadcast, and they have been fed Russian propaganda only. And in 6 to 8 months, they were so totally brainwashed that they have picked up arms and joined the rebels, so the military guys who have been delivered literally in what back then was called the humanitarian convoys from Russia. I don't know if you recall that.
I think that's a similar situation to what's happening in Transnistria today.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the script is really the same. They're just adapting. And so that was the moving point, and I started really to immersing myself into studying propaganda and information manipulation from the very basics until up to various case studies through history, which led me to understanding that that's the future. That is the future of the next couple of decades of warfare. I mean, I was sure then, and look at where the world is now. That led me back to school. So I went to Leicester to study international security, where I focused on that very subject. And I have written a dissertation about a sort of like theoretical approach, a framework to a globalized political propaganda. So how to perceive it, how to face it. And it serves me until today. Then after Leicester, I have realized there is not a single initiative in Slovakia that is dedicated to educating the public at large, to speaking about topics that are really important. And that was mid-2018. So the whole Russian hybrid operation was rolling already for 4 to 6 years by now. So I've established or founded a web project, the web portal called Infosecurity.sk, which was meant to do a couple of things. First, open source investigations into actors and proxies of information manipulation, very similar as Bellingcat, but we did really only that scope of targets. Illicit actors online. So if you had Facebook pages that have been pushing Russian propaganda, we tried to uncover who's behind them. Same with websites, and it worked pretty well. So we had a couple of very successful stories. And I ran a podcast called Disinfo Report, which has been broadcasted on the major Slovak news website called Actuality.sk. And I've got an offer later on to after the murder of Jan Kuciak and his fiancée, when Fico had to leave his position. There were new elections, and the new defense minister had asked
When
me
was
to...
this?
That was 2020.
2020.
It was late 2020. I was asked to consider joining his team as the advisor on hybrid threats at the Ministry of Defence, which is basically the one of the highest position in the echelons of the defense ministry, whatever that means in the context of Slovakia, and it doesn't mean much, to be honest. So I went through the procedure as anyone else, and I won. Frankly, all the other candidates didn't pass the English test. I was the only one.
That's an advantage.
It was pretty high. I was C1, I think. Yeah, C1, yeah. So
why do you need English to counter disinformation campaigns in Slovakia?
Well, the logical answer is you can't never do it alone. You must be connected to your allies around the alliance, which makes perfect sense. I don't know if that was the intention of the ministry officials who set it up this way. I don't know, but that makes perfect sense because most of the time you talk with foreign allied counterparts of yours. So
and this would also be NATO allies, right?
Yes, obviously. I'm not going to talk to Russians or to Iranians or Chinese, right? Or very frankly, Hungarians for that matter, right? I mean, what's the point? I've been asked once to prepare a conference on hybrid threats with the Hungarians. I told my superiors, I mean, are you nuts? Seriously? I'm not going to do that. I mean, it's a waste of my time, frankly.
Do you think that they are just a liability, or do you think they don't care, or what do you think is the problem with Hungary in this?
Seriously?
Devil's advocate question.
Okay, well, you don't need intelligence to see who is who in the world of Russian influence. I mean, it's really obvious. And look at who is best friends recently and in the long term with the Russians. I don't know, is that the British president, the British prime minister at this very moment? Or is it the Hungarian president or the Slovak prime minister? I mean, there's a chain of indirect evidence, such as, visiting Putin during wartime in Kremlin. Hello.
Inappropriate,
right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not only inappropriate, it hints to something far beyond than a courtesy visit. I mean, you just don't go to make courtesy visits for the sake of publicity. That doesn't work like that. I mean, yes, it's part of it, but then again, it has many, many, many layers, such high state level visits. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, you can finish your thought.
No, I think I just went a bit astray when I was telling, sort of like trying to conclude my own story about what I did. So then I've done that for a year, so advising the defense minister, and then I have been given the task to form a counter-hybrid stratcom unit, which basically means that I was tasked to construct a communication unit that had to work in a different way than the traditional communications or press unit in the ministry, which is a task many governments in the alliance struggle with. I mean, up to this day. So I've been working on that for half a year, and then I realized that the frictions I had with my minister and his people were unsurmountable, and I left the ministry because I found out that the minister wasn't really serious about the work that we've been doing.
Okay. And this was a previous government, so what was the governing party and affiliation then?
It was the governing party, which was the name.
Polano?
Yes. So if you're familiar with Beppe Grillo in Italy, so that was it. Like very, like pro-democratic populist, would you call them? The problem with that party was that the party leader was and still is highly problematic because he's a very unstable personality, and which in consequence led to his approval rate being the lowest in the history of this country up to this date. You can't really work like that when you are a prime minister. And
No, of course.
So creating he was able to. So when I say that the Russian operatives who ran for years information operations to sow distrust of the Slovak public into its institutions and the whole democratic establishment and democratic processes, what the government of Mr. Matović, who was then the prime minister, the person I talked about, accomplished during their rule, was 10 times more potent than what the Russians were trying to do, as in undermining public trust in democracy itself. That was the backdrop of the rise of Fico number 4.
We can see here the popularity is just dropping catastrophically of Olano.
Oh, yeah, you have that one. Yeah, that's there you go.
And Smer is just rising until the previous election.
Yep. Nice.
Well, I just wanted to show anybody who's visually looking at this the history of politics. And so the current coalition is left-wing populist nationalist, as I understand it.
The current coalition is they do claim to be leftist or socialist, but I don't think they are, because if you look at their policies, if you look at the way how they mobilize their constituencies, it's just simple far-right populism and pro-Kremlin far-right populism. That's nothing to do with socialism, or like social democratic policies of a standard Western European kind.
Yeah, because you had two parties calling themselves social democrats, essentially.
But one stemmed from the other, because the leading people from that party actually originate from Fico's party. So there is not a huge difference. I mean, now the person who leads the party is at the same time the Minister of Interior, and he started out as a false as a person who comments on social media of his bosses, party members of Smer, the Fico's party, under a false name, trying to promote their content. So false commenter, what do you call it in English? This is how he started out, and he worked his way up to become the party leader when the actual party leader won the elections and become the president of the state.
So it's like a hostile
funny
takeover.
Story here, really.
Yeah, it is. Well, funny in a way.
I'm not making this up, seriously. I mean, look it up. It's all there, out in the open.
So what I remember, so Slovakia joined both the EU and NATO in 2004. So that's 20 years ago.
That's a long time ago, yeah.
That was a long time ago, and you had like 97% approval ratings for the EU. What do you think that looks like today, and why has it changed?
I think it's still pretty high, but it really depends how you ask the question. So in a very generic polling, that would be, I would guess, 70-ish% the approval rate. But if you ask, I don't know, the voters of Fico, it will be lower. If you ask more, pro-democratic parties, voters of pro-democratic parties, that will be much higher. But the average is, I'm not sure about the numbers, right? So don't.
That's okay. We can.
But it's like 70-ish, I think.
Okay, but why do you think it's changed? Is it disinformation? Is it reality?
I think it's a bit of both, and it's also the immense speed by which the information space changes, and the way how basically political mobilization happens. Like 15 years ago, it was all television debates, evening news, newspapers. Today, it's completely different. It's all powered by social networks, dominantly by Facebook, which we all know it's not a forum where a just debate about the benefits of society happens, right? It's just not true. And if you look at the numbers, then you will find out that right-wing populist forces, at least in Slovakia, but I think that's the case all around the globe, and it's going to be a huge thing now, 2025, after what Zuckerberg said when he was approaching the new American president, is that, for example, take Fico, his interaction rate, which then translates by a quite established correlation to millions of views, has many more numbers. So he can reach many more people than, for example, Kamala Harris did in the presidential elections. And not many more, like exponentially more. Fico has regularly 30, 50, 60,000 interactions on his posts, which like translates into roughly 2 million views on a post in a country of 4.5 million people, of which like 2/3 are voters. That is the status quo here for many years now.
But are these real people, or are they fake interactions, bot farms?
No,
I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, there are certain elements that haven't been proven. I mean, there are certain elements that are like, suspicious. It doesn't, I mean, I think, not entirely sure, but I think I saw a research on that a very small, someone was suspecting false accounts, right? So they did a research on this, and they found out, yes, they are fake accounts, but the proportion compared to real ones is really negligible. So bottom line, the reach is real.
That's
Why?
incredible.
No one knows. It's business secret, right? Facebook will never tell you. Meta will never tell you. I mean, me as a former government official, I have been in touch with the representatives of Meta, and it's been the worst scam relationship, I don't know how to call it, that I had with anyone in my experience.
What happened?
No, it's such a level of intransparency and vague answers and the sheer absence of will to act on evidence that you would never ever consider those people as partner in your private business.
They don't want that responsibility, do they? Like, they never wanted to moderate because that costs extra money for them to manage.
It does only cost extra money. No. It doesn't cost so much money. I mean, the amount of money Meta makes in a year is huge. I mean, and a fraction of that would be necessary to make the place a decent place where the mythical debate for democracy could take place in a way that it would be just. Zuckerberg said that his systems are complex and that mistakes are being made. Well, yeah, but you have so much cutting-edge technology at your fingertips that it is a question of political will. Well, he has a huge corporation that translates in money and influence to nation states, big ones even now today. So it is his literally political decision to make a seriously efficient regulation of his network work. And I think it would be perfectly feasible.
I mean, I think he could definitely do it if he wanted to. But I used to work with customer support related areas in the past, and I know that any company, they want to deflect as much as possible onto the community if you can. Because you don't want to hire your own people. So I think maybe there is a small part of it that is just squeezing profitability for shareholders. But then, of course, as you say, there's also most likely a very big ideological component, especially now with the new government in the US.
Yeah, you can basically now see that it's not entirely business. It has become politics. And what happened in the States is that, oligarchs are part of every democracy, always has been the case. And there has been the friction between people who try to push for more transparency, democracy, watchdogs, activists, NGOs, journalists. And then there are the oligarchs who are trying to lobby those in power. And that has been part of US politics since its inception. Never had been the case that oligarchs been sitting in the White House before, which is the case now.
It's very open now.
I mean, it's surreal, but that's what today's reality looks like. And those people control the information space in which European elections happen. Now, that's the important part.
Can you help me paint the picture of Slovakia today? What does the political landscape look like? Which parties are there and who are the key people
All right, so let's look at the coalition around Mr. Fico. So it's him who is the leader of the party Smer, which means direction. Now people are making jokes that the direction is straight towards Moscow. Then is his coalition party, Hlas, which means voice, which basically is a sister party because the founder, now the president of state, was one of the Fico's closest allies. And many people from the party then simply went to the new founded party. And it happened when Fico was politically proclaimed dead after the murder of Jan Kuciak. They thought, okay, Smer is dead. We still want to have some political future. Let's do another party. Let's become the new Social Democrats. Okay. And then there is the SNS, which means Slovak National Party, which is the offshoot of the founding fathers from the mid-19th century of the Slovak nation, from under the Hungarian occupation within the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But that party morphed into a very transparently clean pro-Kremlin proxy. There's no policy. That's just pushing Putin's policy into Slovakia. That's the only thing they are interested in. And obviously in getting paid for projects and making state money disappear. But that always has been their agenda.
How do you think the money is moving here? Is it moving into individual pockets of the leadership, or is it moving into party funds?
That would be me speculating really hardcore. So I just want to emphasize that I'm very much speculating here. What money? I mean, if you are clever, then you just embezzle money through state projects and tenders, right? That's how they do it. That's how they've been doing it for the last 15 years. And then if you're not clever, then you take cash from different parties. But it has been the case in the past where people were bringing cash in plastic bags. I mean, it's now become part of the Slovak folklore. They call it the time of cash. Now the time of cash is over, and you have to be much more clever to work your way around the fake companies in Cyprus and move your money through A, B, C, D, G, F, Z to get paid eventually after you're out of your post in a couple of years. So it's really complicated schemes, but like really everywhere else. But it's no secret that this happens. Now look at how the country looks like after 3 terms of Fico government, 3 full terms of Fico government. He was the main manager of European funding that was really huge in Slovakia. So we've got so much structural funding for paying for our infrastructure, schools, bridges, highways, and all hospitals, everything, to feel the benefits of being a member of the European Union. But most of that money just disappeared into thin air. Give you a couple of examples. We had the same ambition as Estonia to have a hugely modern, state-of-the-art, electronic state administration. So you don't have to go out of your apartment when you need something from the state. Your ID, your self-assessment, tax declaration, anything. You just open your computer, put your ID into the reader, and you get anything. What happened, there was a budget of 1 billion euros for that. That money disappeared. No one knows where it is. No one has ever been prosecuted for that, let alone sentenced.
That's crazy.
So many other cases that had never been addressed legally. The people who are currently in the Slovak government and close Fico's associates have been not only suspected of being part of those schemes, they have been exactly during the time from 2020 to 2023, during the previous government, they have been investigated, and many of them even, I don't know how you say that in English, accused, not convicted. So brought to one step before you bring someone to court. So when the police has enough evidence to
prosecute.
Yeah, probably prosecute.
Yeah.
So to prosecute, and then you go to court, right?
Yeah.
So many, I mean, I don't know, dozens or a dozen. Let's do a dozen. I'm not entirely sure, but a dozen, and we're talking billions. I'll give you an example. I am from the eastern part of the country. So from a town called Košice, which is, by the way, the second biggest town in the country right after the capital. And there is no highway between those two parts. There is no highway until today from the capital. Yes, there you go. To Košice, it's right there. It's the big letters on the eastern part.
You have two big cities. There should be a highway.
Please, yeah. And it's not only two big cities. That city over there has undergone a impressive development in the last 30 years. I remember it to be a really bad place for anyone. Now it's full of bars, clubs, cultures, galleries, cultural events, concerts, places to work. I mean, houses are every and each time I go there, there's some new house, some new neighborhood actually growing up from nothing. So it's really nice. It's a small town, people compared to Bruges in Belgium.
Okay.
And there's no highway.
To the highway?
Where's the money? Where's the money? What happened to the money meant to the highway? What happened to the management of that project to connect two largest cities in the country? Now, that is another example. And people, and where the Euroscepticism comes from now, circling back to your question whether the Euroscepticism and the skepticism towards the West in general comes from disinformation only, of course not. To large part, yes, but it's also important to say that there is a huge level and amount of disillusion because we are technically part of the European Union for a long time, but we don't see the benefits so much because the money has disappeared. And that is the sheer cynicism of our current Prime Minister, who is responsible as the 3-time Prime Minister of this country, under whose rule that money just got lost, to mobilize his constituencies against the European Union today, saying, look, they didn't do anything for you. Which is what happens.
So he used to be a European Union man, right?
He used to be a man of his own interest. When he founded his party back in, I don't remember, but it was like 26, but I really don't know, but very early on. He said that he established the party on the blueprint of how Putin did his.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's a not very much known fact, but that's what he said. And I think he was. And the important thing to understand about Fico is that during the 3 terms he served as prime minister, he was never interested in foreign policy. And while all the very lucrative ministries have been staffed by his closed associates, the MFA post, the post of the foreign minister, was always occupied by a professional diplomat, a recognized professional diplomat internationally, someone who didn't study in McGill or the St. Petersburg University, someone who, one we had studied in McGill, but he wasn't pushing Russian foreign policy. And foreign policy was always something that Fico didn't. Well, he left it. He left it alone, and he left it to the professional diplomatic corps of Slovakia, who actually were able to get Slovakia into NATO, into European Union, into the common Schengen space. We've got into the Eurozone, which is largely the result of the effort of our professional diplomatic corps. Fico 4, the Fico we have now, that's the first time there is no professional diplomat in the ministry, which is even worse. There is a regional politician from Žilina, which is a town in the north of the country. You can even pull up the map if you want. It's north.
Žilina,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it's a really small town, and it's a regional regional politician from there who has no idea about diplomacy, has no idea about international affairs, and he is now the foreign minister. What we know from people who were removed, and that's an interesting story, removed from professional diplomatic service, and there have been around 150 people of whom we know, professional diplomats, of whose common denominator was a very clear pro-Western, pro-European, pro-alliance professional stance. They have been let go, and they have been replaced with graduates from Russian MGIMO University and the St. Petersburg University. That happened in the first year of Fico rule. This is also something that is little known. So what we are looking at now during Fico's fourth term is that he is completely replacing the diplomatic service with potential Russian intelligence assets. I mean, this is not a joke. And how do we know? We know because senior diplomats who left were so really angry about the way it happened and the fact that they're being replaced with, first of all, junior people, and secondly, people who have been educated in today's Russia, that they spoke to the press and they told everything, just what I told you, what happened. And
we've seen similar things. I think if looking in Germany, Russia would target Alternative für Deutschland, AfD, right, and they would talk directly to them, create conspiracies and whatnot. So I can just imagine they're doing the same with Smith.
Oh, absolutely. And the interesting part is that one of the the diplomats who gave away a lot of information during an interview said that the foreign minister actually, behind closed doors, in off-record talks with his counterparts, he's parroting Russian propaganda about Ukrainians' genocide in Donetsk and other mainstream Russian narratives. I mean, just take a couple of seconds and let that sink in.
Yeah, like what makes a person do that?
Believing in that. I mean, I don't think that there is anything to gain diplomatically from pretending you believe these things. There's nothing that I can think of.
I mean, I'm just struggling personally to see how you end up in such a bubble that this becomes
I can tell you
the truth.
Do you want to know?
Yeah. Tell our listeners.
So what happened is that since 2012 to 2020, we had Fico and his governments, right?
Yeah.
So there was no way to push against the slow development of the basically huge media ecosystem the Russian had been able to cultivate here. The elite capture they managed to successfully co-opt in Slovakia, and they are entangled in
What
many
what is that?
businesses, in many
Elite capture?
elite capture. So they have their the people who work with them, for them, or in one way or another promote their interests are people in high positions across society, business, and politics. I mean, look
Okay.
at what the prime minister does. Look at what the culture minister does. The culture minister is a uh, is a person who speaks about the preservation of the white race through adjustments in the Slovak culture policy. Hello. I mean,
I've heard that before. That was a long time ago, though.
yeah. Now but she isn't particularly bright. We have to say that, she slipped her tongue, I think. But so during that time, what they did here has been tolerated, quite obviously. I mean, you don't have to have access to restricted information to understand that what happened. During so many years, people slip and talk or say something they shouldn't. So we, for example, have a quote from a former diplomat, now part of the Hlas party, who completely changed his approach to politics, and now he is like hardcore pro Fico, who revealed then, after the attack on Vrbietice in the Czech Republic, where the two Russian intelligence guys blew up the ammunition depot.
I
You
remember
familiar with
this.
that?
That was
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago, but they have been identified by Bellingcat. And when this happened, when they have been identified, the Czechs kicked out the whole embassy. I mean, the whole embassy went straight back to Moscow. And there were the debate about doing the same thing in Slovakia, where, for obvious reasons, right, have been halted by Mr. Danko, who is the head of the Slovak National Party, which I mentioned before, and when I said that they are like just purely now pushing pro-Kremlin policy. And he said, if you will remove one soul from the Russian embassy, I will crush the coalition. I will just go away and the government collapses. Okay?
That
So
sounds like something somebody would say with a gun pointed at their head, or if they have some kind of radical conviction, almost religious conviction or something.
or they have both. They have usually these things have economic motivations more than anything else. And obviously, in the case of our foreign minister, that's the ideological element there as well. But I think it can start as economic interest, then you get entangled, then it slowly,
Right.
you become compromised, and the Russian intelligence, such as any intelligence in such operations, will gather as much material new as they can in order to eventually motivate you if your motivation declines with time. So everything is possible. But the main reason is really economic, and it's really high probability, although I can't prove anything, that they do have financial gain from that cooperation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the couple of years. Well, that was 2012 to 2020. Then the murder of Kuciak happened. Massive protests. Fico steps down. Matovic, not entirely sane guy, gets elected prime minister. And imagine you are an unexperienced politician with cadres around your party who have some idea about security. The former defense minister was an NGO guy his whole life, and then he transitioned to politics. Only back then he had never, he didn't do anything. I mean, he worked in the ministry. Sorry, yeah, my mistake. He worked in the Ministry of Defence, but I mean, 20,000 people do. So what? He was not on a strategic position. He was not on a position where you have to think about policy. And he was certainly not on a position where you understand how foreign penetration works. So my personal experience is that or in general, the ability of the new pro-democratic government, and we have to say they were pro-democratic, there's no question about it. The government was the ability to counter all the booby traps of the 8, possibly more years, was very limited. And I don't think they had control over the whole system the way it would be expected from a government, because you have forces embedded. This is just my speculation, but based on many encounters and experiences.
Just speculation, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, but it's my personal sort of like analysis. It's like an analysis, but I don't have proof to say it's totally right. But should I write a recommendation, I would give it like 75% probability, right? That they never had total control, neither of intelligence nor of any other parts of the high echelons of the Slovak security apparatus. Because if they had, I mean, it would not have. I mean, there are many people who survived. Let's say it this way: many people who've been serving in that system during the past 8 years under Fico survived the democratic government, who served only 3 years, and then it fell. And then Fico came, and hooray! Give you one example. My team has been infiltrated by one intelligence operative pretending to be part of the community of hybrid threats. It has been published, so I can talk about it.
Okay. Was this now, like this year, or was it some time ago?
No, it's been during my term when I was working, so it was 21 and 22.
Okay. 21, 22.
Yeah. So I've been at the MOD, a couple of others have been at the Ministry of Interior, a couple of others have been at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we met regularly, we spoke regularly, daily even, worked on common projects, common policy papers, we went to conferences together. So we've been a cross-government community of officials who tried pushing our agenda forward. And there was one, and then actually two, one from directly in my team, in my office. Imagine that. But he wasn't intelligence. But we've been infiltrated by another intelligence officer who we later discovered was a close associate of Mr. Fico. There are pictures, her celebrating his election victory back in 2016, was it? From a party. It was an incredible...
But what's the chicken and what's the egg in this situation? Do you think that, their friendship is also the result of some kind of infiltration and now they're just so nestled together? Or do you think it's the other way around?
No, I think what I think is that Fico and his people considered the transition of power to the democratic opposition as an anomaly in the system, and they needed to return back to normal really quickly. So when our teams have been established, our positions have been established, they needed someone on the inside to sabotage or to at least inform the opposition of what we were doing. And I've been sabotaged a couple of times. I spent weeks trying to get things right just because from those people who've been considered regular partners, but constructive critique, and I had to rewrite documents, and it took me a really long time to accommodate their efforts, their requests. And again, they pose as friends. We told them, why not? I mean, you can't be suspicious all the time, especially not when probably there was a mistake, but we should have been protected by our bosses, and we weren't.
But I can certainly understand that in your position now, you have maybe grown some cynicism and you are more naturally skeptical of people around you.
I'm not cynic. No, I don't think I've grown cynical. I'm more experienced. I'm more aware. I'm certainly... I've always been paying a lot of attention to my environment. I mean, I am hypervigilant, always have been. I couldn't have done the job I have done as a journalist if I weren't. But you can't be paranoid all the time. Well, I'm not paranoid. I'm just careful. But if you are, you will never make everything right 100%. And these things just happen. And it happens in a environment where everyone around you has the highest security clearance and where you rely on the political support of your minister, which in my case, I never got. So, I don't think it was really my mistake. So there's not a reason that I should have grown cynical or more paranoid. I just got more aware of how powerful the position of policymakers is in any discussion about security, defense, and especially when you try to implement new elements into the current system.
If we go back to Fico, who are the people around him? Because as you painted a picture of, the security apparatus, the embassy staff from Russia were not kicked out, and so on. So I can assume that there's a general landscape with a lot of people that have a connection to Russia. Which ones around Fico are the most important ones? Are there family members there as well? Are they like old childhood friends? Is this a kind of oligarchy? How would you describe, who are the people and how would you describe the relationships of the power movement?
I'd like to sort of avoid calling them names. What I can tell you is I can simply describe who they are. So there's the prime minister, right? Then there is his long-term party friend, Mr. Kaliňák, who is now the defense minister. Then you have, there are vice chairmen of the party. One of them is sitting as a European MP in the European Parliament. The other one is, I think, now the acting head of the parliament. So there are business class of people who, at the same time, sit on high government posts.
Do you think there's any nepotism here?
I mean, like family connections. The only family connection that is really evident, and I think I mentioned that before, is the one between the intelligence head and the chairman of the parliament, who is a relationship between a father and son. And it's a close relationship. The son, the head of the intelligence service, here on his forearm has a tattoo of his father.
That's, family right? First. That's what they say, right?
Yes, that's what they say. And that guy has links to Russia, quite obvious. They don't hide it anymore. And I remember 2016, it was quite toxic for publicly appearing persons, politicians, or whomever to be associated with the pro-Kremlin disinformation websites. Now, those websites are the media projects, not only websites, but those media projects, influencers, podcasters are usually those media the government officials go to have a conversation. They have been totally normalized. One such presenter of such a media project is the current culture minister, right? But who else? So let's go to the opposition. I think I mentioned the last party and the false social media guy who now runs the party and aligns completely with the rhetoric of Mr. Fico. Then we have the Slovak National Party.
So you have the three parties. You have Smer, Hlas, and Slovak National Party, SNS.
Yes, that's it.
That's it. And what I can see here from this chart is that their popularity has actually started to slide. Like, go down, Smer is dropping and PS is growing.
Yes, true. But still, if you see the difference, that is the scissor, right? And when the Smer goes down and PS goes up, it's still the difference is the difference of a statistical error. So if we have 6 months to campaign, I guarantee you it will go up again, and the blue one, the progressive Slovakia, will go down. I have no doubt about it. But we can come to the reasons later. But if I understand your question correctly, you want me now to go to speak about the opposition?
Let's talk about the opposition. That's okay. Yeah. Okay. Is there any promising? PS would be the big opposition party.
Yeah,
right.
Certainly, yes. And they are the Slovak progressives. They are very young. The leader is younger than myself, and look at me, I'm not that old.
You're young. It's very.
I am definitely
a child.
No, he's not a child. I mean, he's like, I'm not like 36-ish, but he has a very healthy. He looks very young and very healthy, and not in a bad way. He certainly, I mean, he's an Oxford-educated intellectual, okay. Whose values are bulletproof. there can be any doubt about him as a person, as an intellectual leader, as yes, there you go, as someone whose idea 40 years. Oh, it's not so young. My apology. But he's a sporty guy. He looks really very
It's a
young and
compliment.
healthy.
He looks younger
Yeah,
than he
he
is.
looks
That's
younger than he is.
great
But so do
compliment.
I. If I shave, then I look younger than him. I'm not that much older than him anyway. Anyway, I really like the guy. I think he is transitioning from a rookie politician to a hardened, experienced political figure really quickly. But still, he isn't there yet. I do personally appreciate his dedication, his will to face Fico and his really hardened, hardcore group of associates who are, veterans of political campaigning and the political conflict, if you will, which is natural to all democracies. And when I mean conflict, I mean the conflict that's resolved on the grounds of a parliament, on the parliamentary debate in the media, and so on and so forth. And I laud his courage for that.
But I mean, because there are other conflicts. If you say that Smer was founded in the image of, is it United Russia, Putin's party?
Yeah.
Like then there might be fear of something violent actually happen. I'm not saying that's true today. I don't know enough, but that could happen. Or
you mean in these days?
In these days, yeah, I don't know. Or in the future, depends on where we're going.
We can come to that. We can come to that. Should I talk about the possibility of a violent, like of state-sponsored violence? Is that the question?
Yeah, we don't have to have a particular structure here. So if we find something interesting.
Okay. So maybe I just very quickly finish talking about Mr. Šimečka, who is the young leader. And he is the shadow prime minister today because his party today is ranking the highest in public opinion polls. What I really don't appreciate about his way of doing politics is that now, today, in this political and information environment, you have to have an incredibly strong position on social networks, which he doesn't. He doesn't. I mean, and I criticize that openly, like really very much, very regularly even. And there is no change. If you compare only the numbers between him and Mr. Fico, I mean, he got like 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5,000 interactions on posts where Fico get 30, 40, 50. And I know why, because the content isn't good. And they never pay for distribution, and Fico always does. And not always, but regularly. They don't know the algorithm. The team is highly likely, I don't know that, just I think from what I see, it's highly likely very junior. They don't employ professionals. Fico does. So the ignorance of investing capital, human and financial, in communications is so paramount if you are asking for trust of your constituencies, if you want to promote your policies, and if you want to campaign.
This is something populist parties seem to be much better at. Like I mean, in all countries, I think they're using modern.
I think it's the other way around. I think it's the other way around. People who are good at that are using methods and tactics that at the end of the day we call populist. And it's also the way how they use social media. You don't have to be abandoning your standards. You don't have to lie. You don't have to invent stories. You just have to invest more time, effort, put more attention, and pay for distribution. And they don't. The common denominator of those less fortunate on social media is not only that they are mostly pro-democratic parties, but also those who have no clue how that game is played. And you don't have to. You are a statesman or an aspiring statesman. You don't have to know everything. No one does.
No,
but a clever statesman, a clever politician then surrounds himself with people who do and listens to them. So that would be my problem with progressive Slovakia. That is also why I think that it's more likely that they would fail in a campaign, on a campaign trail, should a date of a parliamentary elections be known. So let's say, I don't know, 1st of December 2025,
right,
or 1st of September. We know the date. Fico and his friends start to hardcore campaign. They won't be matched by anyone. If the pro-democratic spectrum won't change the way they operate online, that polls you see over there would completely change.
Do you think there's any, because I remember there was an issue in Romania recently with foreign influence in elections. What was the election? Was it European Union?
It was presidential. In Romania,
it was presidential, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so they're redoing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Or they went back to redo the whole
Yeah,
thing.
they
Would that
canceled
ever happen would that happen in Slovakia right now? Because I don't think there would be any interest from the ruling party to redo anything.
No, of course not. That would be a coup. That would be a coup. Fico even said that forces from Georgia and Romania are here to instigate a coup. Because on Friday,
Georgia?
again, of course, Georgia.
What are they doing?
I don't know. Selling Georgian brandy, trying to undermine our statehood. I don't know.
It's not bad. Okay, yeah.
Again, it's his claims. Nothing from the classified report has been, made public. A part of the letter that has been generated by ChatGPT. So what happened in Romania, that was a healthy response of democratic institutions who just pulled the emergency brake on a heavy foreign information manipulation effort. Brilliant. And it happened the first time in history, and we should all pay a lot of attention at that. And it happened also by declassifying information from a credible intelligence agency. That would not be the case in Slovakia because our agency is not credible. So when I spoke to a couple of journalists earlier today, I've been asked, what do you think about the report? And I answered, well, you have to look at the messenger first. Are they credible? I mean, intelligence work is hugely dependent on trust. I mean, when you look at how allied intelligence agencies work and cooperate together, it's the trust of their leaders and their own personal relationships that dictate the nature of bilateral intelligence exchange. Look at the famous Club de Bern, right, where intelligence is informally exchanged. And that whole thing.
I don't know this. I'm not in the information community, so I don't know about this.
It's it's an informal platform where entirely based on personal trust of high intel officials of allied countries. It's basically Europe and a couple of others, but it's, the democratic West and no one else. Austria has been kicked out from that because, Russian penetration. Yeah, well, that happened. And the membership have been put on hold, how they put it. So trust is a key element of intelligence work. And if you can't trust your own intelligence agency, how credible can you perceive the claims of a state coup ahead of a peaceful demonstration? And I say peaceful because those people who organized that demonstration, that's not their first demonstration. They always have been peaceful. There is no reason to think otherwise. Those people are they have no history of violence. I understand if you would say those activists over there are going to abuse the demonstration against the government to instigate violence. It would be a completely different thing if you are pointing your finger on known terrorists or known troublemakers, on people with known history of violence or criminal behavior. But those people aren't. One is a theater playwright or something. The other one is an IT guy. The third one, they are known activists. Totally clean criminal record. It doesn't make any sense. The intelligence report doesn't make any sense from whatever way you look at it.
So I feel like we're getting into what's happening this week, maybe even today, yesterday. This is what I understand has taken up your morning today as well, talking about this issue. Can you describe it? What's going on?
All right. So Fico has been to Kremlin. It was 23rd of December. Surprise, surprise.
Christmas.
Then it was a present for the Slovak public, yeah.
Yeah.
And this happens after the revelations from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that happens after the father to the intelligence chief, by mistake, replying to a journalist's question, say that, getting out of the European Union should be an open option. It was a huge thing, a scandal, I think. I even wrote about this on the Slovak Media Monitor, which I, by the way, encourage all our viewers to check on online.
I'll send a link in the description.
Thanks, yeah. With the most recent news that impact security and the rule of law in Slovakia. So, and that guy said this, which led to a huge wave of uproar, logically. And we have an anti-government demonstration on Friday across the country. So not only in the capital, not only in Košice, which we looked at, not only in Žilina we also saw, but I think it's, 15-ish places. And it's also Prague, it's Luxembourg, it's all the European cities where a relevant amount of Slovak diaspora lives. And in that context, we have a prime minister who, with a highly likely, is with the help of the intelligence agency under his control, highly likely manufactures a piece of classified evidence in order to claim an foreign instigated coup attempt is going on in Slovakia through those protests. The memorandum from today was the Security Council session, and the memorandum from that session clearly says that the people behind that coup are the organizers of the protest, and that the intelligence agency is monitoring all the relevant parties. So what we have here is Slovak Intelligence Service, the one intelligence agency in the country, monitoring anti-government activists with no criminal record, no record of violence, no record of foreign contacts or interference whatsoever, and threatens with use of force should something happen or should something slip out of hand. So Fico actually passed a law after there was an assassination attempt on his life a couple of months ago, that protests are not allowed in a certain perimeter around government buildings. So should someone, and this protest is very close to the government's office, it's outside the perimeter, so it's legally all right, but it's really very close. But imagine, should some provocateurs or someone just run on the gates of the government building, and we know that they called titushki. It happened on Maidan, it happened in Georgia, it happened all around the world, all around the place.
Right?
Provocateurs, yes.
Yeah.
That would be a reason for a violent intervention from the side of police. And the police is totally under control by the Minister of Interior, who is at the same time the leader of Hlas, and as I said, is perfectly aligned with Fico's rhetoric. So we have the police under their control. The military, under the control of Mr. Kaliňák, who is Fico's close associate, and the military intelligence service we haven't touched upon today, which has also the counterintelligence unit within, tasked with monitoring foreign assets. We have for the civilian intelligence, of which we are talking the whole time, under Fico's control. So basically the whole apparatus, security apparatus. And now we have like 5 to 10 activists who are, I'm telling you, I know most of them personally. They have no idea about the implications of what we are talking here about. It's not their well at all. I can't see a universe where they would be implicated in any of what they are accused of. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Do you think there's a risk that Slovakia in the near future, could be in a similar situation as Georgia?
That's a good question. We'll be much wiser after Friday. It's this distinct possibility. And I'll tell you why. It's something that I wanted to talk about anyway. So we had a continuous wave through the summer and the autumn of bomb threats in Slovakia, bomb threats to schools. Many schools have been evacuated many times. Police with dogs and all bomb squads regularly in schools. And I mean elementary, high schools, universities, research institutes, all that sort of thing. Not only in Slovakia, in the Czech Republic as well. While the Czech foreign minister had no issues clearly and publicly pointing his finger on the Russians, he just said it's coming from there. I mean, come on, guys. Just think. Can you count to 5? Everyone who can knows where that stuff is coming from.
Was that a hot take, or was there some intelligence report?
Of course, no. Yeah, it was based on intelligence. I mean, he didn't say, but he said, based on what I know, it's the Russians. Yeah. I mean, okay. He wouldn't. Right. He just that's. I mean, look, politicians reveal intelligence all the time. They just don't say it's intelligence.
Yeah,
they do it. I mean, if you know, I mean. It's my personal experience. You know a lot of stuff, then you see and hear the guys who know the same thing talk on the press. Like, what? Stop! Don't! But it's usually most of the stuff is overclassified anyway, so it's harmless to put it out. I mean, usually people who classify stuff are paranoid anyway, so that's why it's overclassified. Okay. Seriously,
classify less.
Yeah, and so back to the bomb threats. It has never been addressed by anyone. The only thing the Slovak government, actually the police, said, cyber attack, right?
From somewhere.
We don't know. It's a cyber attack, right? And then 3 days later, that father of the intelligence chief meets with the Russian ambassador on the grounds of the National Council. Secret meeting, got discovered by journalists, so they do an emergency sort of like press conference or ad hoc, not emergency, because they were pretty confident. So an ad hoc press conference and declared they've been meeting to discuss cybersecurity with the Russian ambassador during the war, ongoing Russian aggression in Ukraine, just 3 days after the Slovak police declared the ongoing bomb threats to Slovak children a cyber incident. Now, fast forward like 9 months, something like that, to yesterday's Facebook post of the Interior Minister, who said that those bomb threats are part of the elements of foreign interference that the government is now talking about, that points to the ongoing coup that is being prepared. Now, if that is not an indication of Russian foreign influence, I don't know what is. I mean, it walks like a dog, it quicks like a dog, and you have a chain of, like a huge chain of indirect evidence such as this that points towards Russia.
So false flag bomb threats from Russia to they want to mix that up with the opposition that is very peaceful right now in Slovakia and make it seem like it's the same people doing this.
It's very likely. It is very likely. I mean, Russians know how to plan. They plan long-term, years. I mean, they really do plan years ahead. And to me, and I don't know, but it makes perfect sense to me that a widely publicized series of bomb threats, and that there have been 10, 15 incidents through the summer or before the summer, like July, May, June, and then fall, September, October. and then yesterday, and actually today, also in Hungary, 120 threats, in such a way that the Hungarian president asked the Slovak intelligence service for help. Imagine that. So, I mean, we are moving towards something here that may, and again, may not reveal itself on Friday during the protests.
They should ask the Serbians for help next.
Yeah, exactly.
But it seems like it's an interesting, if we look at the map of Europe, the countries that seem now in some that there seems to be some kind of grouping forming, right, with Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, and it's all Central East Europe. So do you think that's a part of the great plan geographically, also to focus efforts in this area, maybe for historical reasons? And if so, then why not Bulgaria and maybe they try? I don't know.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, just look at what. Do you know Alexander Dugin? It's the main sort of like.
Yeah, I know the name.
Yeah, it's the main sort of like Kremlin Putin philosopher who advocates for a big Russia, for a multipolar world where Russia has his. I'm doing it. Yeah, that's the guy. I'm doing this really very quick wrap up. He's a hardcore Russian fascist intellectual who simply wants Russia to be a dominant power again, with unlimited sovereign powers, which means basically they can commit from targeted assassinations to genocide, anything in their sphere of influence. And their sphere of influence is whatever was part of the former Soviet Union, which is today's eastern flank of the alliance, from all the Baltics to Serbia, including Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland. But they won't get Poland. Good for the Polish.
Yeah, they're very resistant.
They may get Slovakia, and we may just know on Friday. Yeah, there you go. How can you pull that up so quickly?
I don't know. Quick typer.
Probably.
I have 3 monitors as well.
Okay, now that's easier.
Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe it's time for us to wrap it up. It's been a great talking to you and learning some things about what's happening in Slovakia now. We'll know more on Friday. Let's see, maybe this episode will actually be out on Friday, tomorrow. Any last words?
Pay close attention to what happens in Slovakia, what happens in Hungary, because Czech Republic is next and Germany after that. Well, Germany's first. I will wrap up with answering your previous question. If I think that there is a pattern in the raising of populist politicians in Europe, and yes, and it seems to be part of the plan. And the plan now, I think, is mostly supported by the current American administration, whose influence on social networks will, to a great extent, drive that transformation, because it will give much more space to those populist nationalist voices than to anyone else. And now we must find a way how to counter that. That's why I was criticizing the Slovak opposition leader. It's not that because he is unable, but it's a really tough task to resolve, to face, to challenge. But yeah, I think it. Look, I mean, I'm the last person who would like to conspire or to think of the sophisticated webs of connections and all that sort of thing. But it seems, and many things point to a highly likely possibility that the only relevant global entity that is still liberal democratic is the European Union. It's not Russia. It's certainly not the States at this point. And the European Union is the only island which is economically and politically more relevant than, respectfully, New Zealand, for example, that is also a beacon of democracy. And I really like the way how they do that. But Europe is a challenge. It's a huge entity. It's a challenge to Russia and to the United States as well under the current administration. And I would rather put my money on the theory where the rise of populist, right-wing, nationalist, populist voices in Europe is also in the interest of those two other global powers, because then it would undermine the integrity of the Union, and we would see the reality of a new multipolar world, which the Russian want, probably also President Trump wants. And what that means, I mean, Russia doesn't want territory in Ukraine. Russia, the final goal is they want to become a superpower in their own sphere of dominance, which is what we touched upon before. So if I should leave our listeners and viewers with an idea, is that, first of all, remove all your children from social networks today.
So your kids are not on.
Of course maybe your kids are just not. No, of course they're not. I mean, they won't be there until they are 18, and they can, I hope until then I'll make them understand that it's the most toxic place to be. No TikTok, no Facebook, no Instagram, no anything. You can chat with your friends, and that's it. You can have Signal or WhatsApp. No social networks, no dumb scrolling, because that would be a topic for another podcast. First of all, if you can get your children off these platforms, do it. If you think you can't, use whatever means they are at your disposal. Get your kids off social networks today, because the way they've been toxic until today, this will be on steroids since 2025. And moving forward. Second, pay close attention what happens in Central Europe, what happens through elections that are upcoming in the countries of the European Union, because each will be different, each will be having their own challenging elements. Nothing will be, it's not going to be the same as it was in Romania. The Germans will have different elections than the Czechs and vice versa. And you have to be paying a lot of attention to that. You have to be paying a lot of attention to the patterns, to the actors, and learn how to resist the rise of global national populism, because that is the main challenge of the European Union. We are basically facing the very survival of the European Union. Will it grow up? Will it realize that now it's on their own? Can they manage? Can they push away the rise of populism? But can we? Really? So that is the huge question to realize.
It's a bit of a rite of passage, isn't it, for the European Union, this one?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, we have these two parts within ourselves. We need to consolidate them and become adults.
Exactly. We need to grow up. We absolutely need to grow up. And when Trump says that we don't invest enough in defense, well, he's right. I don't want to defend him in any way. But that's something he said, and he wasn't alone. Many people from the allied militaries, I mean, the high officials, say the same thing for years now. 2% is a joke. I mean, look, the whole security architecture has been totally changed by Russian aggression in 2 years. 3, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time to grow up. Yeah.
Yeah. Get off social media, follow the elections, help Europe grow up.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you so much, Victor.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the invitation. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Splendor of the Sun. It was nice to have you. Hope to see you again. This is a podcast about stories and histories, geography, wars, and mysteries. If you're interested in more and like the vibe, remember to hit like and subscribe. Sometimes truth is complicated. Like emotions, it can be unconsolidated. The sun and splendor is a symbol to maybe guide you. We could all use some knowledge to ride to. We have to burst the bubble and leave our chamber. The echoes grow stronger and put us in danger.